Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session today, which is related to overthinking. So, let me start by asking you something. Have you ever had one of those days when you're completely exhausted, but the moment you finally get out of your bed or get into your bed, but your mind suddenly says that, great, now let's think about everything? So, you start thinking about what happened today, then you remember something you said yesterday, and then you start worrying about tomorrow, then you remember an old conversation, then you start wondering what someone thinks about you, and suddenly one small thought has become 20 different thoughts. So you just want to tell your mind, please, can we just switch off for a while? So, if you have ever experienced this, you're definitely not alone. Many of us overthink, we replay conversations, we worry about our futures as well, we question our decisions, we imagine worst case scenarios as well. And we also wonder what others are thinking. And sometimes the most frustrating part is that we all know we what are we doing, but we don't know how to stop. So, today we are going to explore overthinking. Why can't I switch off my mind? So, I'm joined by Harvinder Kaur, a psychologist counselor and a psychotherapist. Welcome, Harvinder.
Thank you, Srishti. I'm very happy to be here. I see overthinking quite often. And what's interesting is that people sometimes think that something is wrong with me because I cannot control my thoughts. But overthinking is something we can understand. And once we understand what's happening, we can begin learning healthier ways of responding to our thoughts.
Right. So, let's begin with the basics first. We hear the word overthinking all the time. So, I want to ask what actually is overthinking? And how do we know that when we are simply thinking about something and when we have actually start overthinking?
Okay. So I would say first important thing which we all need to understand is thinking. Thinking is not the problem. Thinking is healthy. We need thinking to plan something, to solve some problems, or to make decisions and prepare for the future. Difficulty begins when thinking becomes repetitive and unproductive. So let's take an example. Take one simple example. Maybe you have an important meeting tomorrow. And healthy thinking might be that I have a meeting tomorrow. So, what do I need to prepare? How to explain? You can make a plan, you prepare, and then you move on. Overthinking sounds little different. So, it might be what if the meeting goes not well? Maybe what if I make any mistake? What if I will not be able to make others understand? What will everyone think about me? Or what if my manager is not happy with me? So lots of negative thinkings are coming, negative thoughts are coming, which did not happen. So maybe I should not, I should prepare more. I was not ready. Or maybe my manager will be rude with me. Lots of questions may come. You prepare more, but when you think about it again and again, you are not actually getting closer to a solution. So, one simple way to remember it is healthy thinking helps us to move forward, but overthinking keeps us going around in the cycles.
Right, that's interesting because actually overthinking can feel really productive. We think that I'm analyzing the situation, so I'm doing something about it.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes we are not solving the problem, we are simply rehearsing the problem repeatedly in our mind, and that can be exhausting.
Right. So, Harvinder, we understand what overthinking is, but how does anxiety fit into all of this?
Yeah, actually, they are very close to each other, right? Connected almost. Anxiety and overthinking can create a cycle. Maybe something happens, then we interpret it. That interpretation creates emotion, and the emotion creates our thoughts, create more thoughts, in fact. And those thoughts increase the emotion. So, one simple way to understand is something happens. Then we have a thought. Then we feel fear or worry, and this change into anxiety. Anxiety keep increasing, and then we think even more. So it's almost a cycle. When something happens means trigger, right? So we have a thought which is generated through trigger. It can be fear, it can be worry, anything. And that emotion of worry, fear, it increases anxiety, and then we keep thinking and it goes into the cycle. So maybe let's take one simple example which generally happens in people life, right? Maybe some colleague is there, and maybe you have a colleague, right? And you have sent a message to your colleague. She has not replied. Fact is simply that she has not replied yet. But maybe your mind may start creating a story. Maybe last day, yesterday, we did not had healthy discussion. So maybe she's upset with me, and then you keep thinking that I have not said that wrong. So what happened to her? Why she is not replying me? Maybe she does not want friendship. Maybe she does not respect me. Maybe people don't like me. And that kind of continuous thinking, or maybe negative thinking, this cycle just generate lots of anxiety and worries. Look at what happened. She simply not replied, right? There may be possibility, maybe lots of other reasons could be. She must be busy. So original situation was very small, but your interpretation turned it into much bigger emotional experience. Maybe which may not be there. Maybe, but which may not be there. It's more prediction actually.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure that many of us has have had this moments like this. And I'm sure many of us have had moments like this where someone doesn't reply and our mind creates a whole story before we even know what's really happening. And we don't even realize that we are actually filling in the blanks ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important to notice how we are interpreting a situation, because we are not always reacting to what actually happened. Sometimes we are reacting to the meaning we have given to what happened. So, fact might be she has not replied, but maybe your mind may turn that into she's angry with me, she's not happy with me, she's not respecting me. And then we react emotionally to that assumption as it's a fact. So, one helpful question to ask ourselves is, what do I actually know and what am I assuming? This is all assumption actually. Small pause can sometimes break this cycle of anxiety and overthinking. And just one thought, actually, what happened? How much I know about actual situation, actual fact.
Right. That actually makes a lot of sense. But then, why does our mind do this in the very first place? Why does the mind overthink? Why can't it simply say that I don't know what's going to happen, so let's just wait and see?
Because our mind often wants certainty and control. Uncertainty can feel uncomfortable. So, mind thinks, if I think about this enough, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening. Or if I consider every possible outcome, I will be prepared. So, this kind of thought to handle a future situation, we are just going into cycles. In that sense, overthinking can actually be an attempt to protect ourselves, actually.
Okay, so in a way, the mind is actually trying to help us.
Exactly. And that's an important point. It may actually be trying to keep us safe, but it can become overprotective. So, problem is that life does not give us complete certainty. We cannot know exactly what another person is thinking. We cannot predict every outcome. We cannot guarantee that nothing will ever go wrong. So, if we keep trying to achieve complete certainty through thinking, we will never finish. And that's when the mind becomes exhausted.
Yeah, so maybe the answer isn't to think more and more until we finally feel certain.
Yeah. Exactly. And sometimes the real skill is not how can I think more? How can I become more logical for upcoming situation? But it is how can I become more comfortable with not knowing? So learning to say I don't have all the answers right now. And that's okay what is happening. I will deal with things as they come. So this is more helpful actually. And it would be more powerful step towards inner peace. It gives lots of peace. Because what we are saying, things which I don't know, let's not push ourselves. I will deal with the things as they come.
Right. I think that is very specifically important for us to talk about because in the first phase, we are focusing on women's emotional well being. So, Harvinder, I wanted to know how can overthinking affect a woman's confidence?
Yeah, it can affect confidence quite a lot, especially when we start questioning ourselves again and again. Imagine you make a decision. So instead of trusting yourself, you immediately think, did I make the right choice? Maybe you have a conversation and did I say the right thing? And if you are expressing an opinion, your question may arise, but if they think I'm wrong, or if you are making some mistake, again you are thinking, why did I do that? That kind of questioning with ourselves, it just impacts on confidence. Or maybe you can think about, why did I do that? I should have known better. So when this happens repeatedly, we can slowly stop trusting our own judgment. We may start seeking reassurance from other people, or maybe we may struggle with decisions. And in that case, it may be possible that we avoid opportunities because we are afraid of making mistakes. We don't allow ourselves to make mistakes. And eventually, we may label ourselves, I'm not confident. But if you see underneath, I'm not confident, it means I don't trust myself enough. So when this becomes a regular pattern, regularly this happens, multiple times happening, we can slowly stop trusting our own judgment and we may start asking others for reassurance. Without others' reassurance, we are unable to take any decision, we are unable to move ahead. It may take longer to make even simple choices. Maybe we may hold back from sharing our opinions or trying something new because we are worried about maybe I will take some wrong decision or something wrong. Or if something wrong will happen, I will not be accepting myself. Such kind of feeling impacts, and it just impacts on the confidence, trust on ourselves, and again, seeking more help from others for reassurance.
Right. And after doing this for a while, we might just start saying to ourselves, oh, maybe I'm just not a confident person.
Yeah, yeah. And exactly, like confidence doesn't mean I know everything. Confidence doesn't mean that I will never make a mistake. Confidence means I may not know exactly what will happen, but I trust myself that I will be able to handle this. That's kind of self trust is required. And developing self trust is an important part of moving out of overthinking.
Wow, I really like that. So perhaps building confidence isn't about getting rid of all of our doubts, but it's about learning to trust ourselves even when we have them.
Absolutely. And that kind of self trust can make a big difference in the way we make decisions or handle relationships and move through life, right?
Yeah, right. So overthinking doesn't stay inside our heads, like, does it? It can actually start affecting our, everyday lives. So I want to ask, like, how overthinking affects our daily life.
Yeah. Maybe I can tell you with some examples. Maybe let's talk about work. So you may constantly worry about making mistakes in the work. Maybe little bit afraid of what my manager will think about, or maybe you may repeatedly check your work. You may hesitate to speak in meetings, or something you want to put your opinion in front of others, but again hesitate. You may avoid opportunities because you are afraid that you won't perform well. Such kind of thing happen. If I talk about relationships, you may analyze someone's tone. If tone is not good, or maybe you keep analyzing before putting your points, or you may think that why didn't the other person is replying, it means that person is not happy with me, or maybe I have done something wrong, or maybe why did she sound different, is something wrong. So that kind of cycles just go majorly in the relationships, and your mind starts creating a story without having all the information, and that story is so typical that in the mind just keep creating the stories day by day, and that creates lots of confusion, misunderstandings, and which impacts relationships badly. Similarly, if I talk about decision makings, you may compare every option. You may search for the perfect decision because you don't have trust on yourself. And even after making a decision, you may wonder, did I make the right choice? So that kind of question arise again and again.
Yeah, sometimes we don't just worry about making a decision, we actually worry about whether we worried correctly about the decision.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the sleep. Body is tired continuously. But the moment your head touches the pillow, mind says, now let's review what we have done in entire day or maybe entire life. Right?
Yeah,
That kind
very,
of
yeah,
thoughts come.
very relatable.
And over the time, this constant mental activity can leave us emotionally exhausted. But perhaps the biggest impact is our relationship with ourselves. If you see, we are not much connected with ourselves in that case. So we can become our own harshest critic, kind of. So instead of supporting ourselves, we constantly question ourselves. And that's why managing overthinking is not just about having a quieter mind, it's also about learning to become kinder towards ourselves.
Right. So, Harvinder, let's say someone comes to you and says, I know I overthink, but I just cannot stop. So, how do you approach that in counseling or your psychotherapy?
Yeah. So first thing is um, I tell them that our goal is not to force your mind to stop thinking because thoughts are going to come. Instead, we try to understand your thoughts. So usually I explore several areas, like identify the triggers, like from where this kind of overthinking starts. When does the overthinking become stronger, at night, or maybe after some argument with a specific person, or before taking any decision, or maybe at work, or maybe someone does not respond, or when you feel judged. Need to find the trigger point, right? So understand the trigger point gives us a starting point. Then second step is identify the thought. What exactly is the mind saying? In a particular situation, if mind saying that, what if I fail? What if they reject me? Or I'm not good enough? Or I should have done better? Or sometimes people say, I don't know what I'm thinking. I just feel anxious. So we slow things down and identify the thoughts underneath the emotion. Then further, we ask to understand. Then further, we just separate facts from assumption. So, this can be cleared by asking question from the client. What do you know for sure? Like if some kind of overthinking is happening, so what do you know for sure? And what is your mind predicting? For example, if some scenario is wherein client says that my manager has not replied, and this is the fact, but after that client is saying probably manager is not happy with me, and it may be possible that my job is in risk, so I'm worried. So my manager has not replied is the fact, but manager is unhappy with me, it's a interpretation. And further, client is say, if suppose client is saying that manager is not happy and it may cause problem in my job, I may lose the job, that is a prediction. So three kinds of things are there: fact, interpretation, and prediction. When we separate these things, we can look at the situation more realistically. And then further, we understand the fear underneath. Sometimes we go deeper. So we ask question like, what are you afraid might happen? And then if that happened, What would it mean about you? So sometimes we discover beliefs such as I'm not good enough, I must be perfect, I can't make mistakes, and people will reject me. So we are not only addressing the thoughts, we are also understanding the fear and belief underneath them.
Right. And also, you have mentioned uncertainty several times. So, why is learning to tolerate uncertainty so important?
Because many people who overthink are actually trying to get an answer that life cannot give them. They want to know, will my relationship work? Will I succeed? Will people like me? Did I make the right decisions? But sometimes there is simply no immediate answer. So, therapy can help a person move from I need certainty before I can feel okay to I can tolerate not knowing. And eventually, I trust myself to handle whatever information comes next. So, that is a huge shift.
Right. And there's also another question I think many listeners may have. Do we really attract what we fear? Because we often hear like attracts like, or what you focus on, you attract. So some people worries that if I keep thinking bad things will happen, am I going to attract it? If I have to take an example, let's say if I'm constantly afraid that I'll lose my job, will I attract job loss? Or if I'm afraid that my relationships will fail, will I somehow make it happen? So, how should we understand this?
I think this needs to be approached very carefully, especially for the people who already struggle with anxiety. So, first, having a fearful thought does not mean that the feared event will happen. Our minds produce many thoughts, right? So, if I think, what if I have a terrible day tomorrow? That thought does not cause a terrible day. And I don't want someone with anxiety to become frightened of their own thoughts. Because then they may start thinking, I must not think negatively. Oh no, I just imagined something bad. Now this is going to happen. And now they're overthinking, and overthinking will cause lots of problems. Right?
Right. That's actually an important point. So, how we can actually understand the idea of what we focus on from a psychological perspective.
Psychologically, psychologically, repeated focus can influence our attention, interpretation, and behavior. Let's say I constantly believe people don't respect me. I may start noticing criticism much more strongly that time. Someone gives me feedback and I think, see, they don't respect me, right? Maybe someone does not respond immediately. So that time I am thinking they are ignoring me. Someone disagrees with me and I am thinking they don't value my opinion. So I may overlook many situations where people actually respected or appreciated me. So my belief influences what I notice and how I interpret things. And then there's a behavior. If I am constantly afraid of rejections, I might avoid conversations, become overly dependent on reassurance, or hesitate to express my needs. That behavior can sometimes affect my relationships. So rather than thinking my fear magically attracted this situation, we can ask, how is my fear influencing what I notice, how I interpret situations, and how I believe? That is much more useful question and helpful for me.
Right. So, we don't need to become afraid of our own negative thoughts.
No, absolutely not. In fact, one of the healthiest things we can learn is I can have a fearful thought without believing it or acting on it. We don't need only positive thoughts. We need balanced and realistic thoughts. For example, instead of everything will definitely go perfectly, we can say I may feel nervous, but I can prepare. I don't have to be perfect. And if something does not go as planned, I can handle it. So that's self trust rather than magical thinking.
Right. So, let's give our listeners something practical. If someone noticed themselves overthinking today, so what can they do?
Okay, so I would like them to try simple 5 question pause, right? First question is to understand what actually happened. This question, what actually happened, helps person to separate the fact from the story. What actually happened means what is the fact. Then next question they can ask from themselves, what am I telling myself about what happened? This is to identify the thought. Third question is, what am I feeling? Maybe fear, anxiety, sadness, anger. What is the feeling coming? And then further, they can ask, what am I afraid might happen? This helps us to understand the deeper fear, right? So, this all helps to separate the points from the story, right? Another question is, what is within my control right now? Everything is not in my control, but we are worried. Then take one small helpful action. If there is nothing you can do right now, practice allowing the uncertainty instead of repeatedly analyzing it. Maybe you can remind yourself, I don't have all the information right now, so I don't need to solve everything right now. I will be able to handle whenever situation will come. So this would be helpful to at least close the story which mind has created.
Right. So basically, you don't have to fight your own mind. And I
Right.
think that's perhaps the biggest message from today's conversation. We are not trying to tell people stop thinking.
Exactly. Because trying to force your mind to stop thinking can sometimes create even more frustration. Instead, notice the thought, understand the emotion, question the interpretation, identify what you can control or not in control, and choose what you want to do. Choose your response.
Yeah. So the goal isn't to have a perfectly quiet mind.
No, the goal is to develop a healthier relationship with your thoughts. You may still have what if, you may still have fear, you may still have doubts, right? But you don't have to automatically believe every thought. Thought is not always a fact. Fear is not a prediction. Uncertainty does not automatically mean danger. And you don't have to control everything to feel safe. You may gradually learn, I trust myself to handle what comes. Just that self trust, self confidence need to increase actually.
Great. So, Harbinder, if you could leave our listeners with just one message today, what would it be?
I would say don't try to control every thought. Just learn to understand your mind. Your mind may have learned overthinking as a way of protecting you. Now you can teach it in a different way. You can pause, you can question the thought. Maybe you can take pen, paper, you can start writing on that. Just ask question from yourself and write what is coming. It will make you more comfortable, like how your mind is thinking. You can tolerate uncertainty and you can learn to trust yourself.
That's beautiful. And perhaps today's takeaway is I don't have to believe every thought my mind produces. I can pause, understand it, and choose how to respond. So, if you find yourself overthinking this week, try asking yourself, is there something I need to do right now, or is my mind simply asking me to feel certain about something I cannot control? So, if there is something you can do, I would ask you to take one small step. If there isn't, give yourself permission to stop analyzing for now because our inner peace doesn't necessarily mean having a perfectly quiet mind. It means learning that I can have thoughts without being controlled by them. So, thank you so much, Harvinder, for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you, Srishti. And thanks to everyone listening. Please be patient and compassionate with yourself. You don't have to solve everything today.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're listening to this and thinking, yes, I understand overthinking, but I'm struggling with a specific situation in my own life. So please don't feel that you have to figure everything out on your own. If you would like, if you would like support with a specific situation, whether it's overthinking, anxiety, relationships, self confidence, or decision making, or something you're currently going through, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what you're struggling with, and we can explore how I may be able to help you. And remember, asking for support doesn't always means that you're weak. Sometimes having someone helps you understand what is really happening inside your mind. That can be the first step towards change. So, until our next episode, take care of your mind, take care of your emotions, and remember, you don't have to switch off your mind. You can learn to make peace with it. So, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.